What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're taking a look at Dead Island 2 here on the Steam Deck, and it's running pretty well. I was pleasantly surprised when I got it fired up today and started testing it out, especially considering a lot of the performance of recent games. Now, this doesn't run on Steam. Unfortunately, this is an Epic Games exclusive right now, so you do need to be running that through Epic Games. I have videos on the channel on how to set that up if you haven't already. Now, going into the game's options, we are of course running at that 800p. I'm at windowed full screen, no VSync or frame cap in game right now. Low for the preset and no FSR. That's just to kind of get us started, and we'll take a look at some different settings as we get into it. But ultimately, like I said, pleasantly surprised at how well the game's actually running. For once on day one, we didn't have any problems with launching or getting the game to work. We didn't have to use any major workarounds other than, of course, I had to install Epic onto my Steam Deck, but that's been working great. And even with having to run through that additional layer and running that launcher, the game still has good performance without a bunch of frame time issues and stutters and things like that. So really happy so far with that. Now let's take a look at some graphics here. Now I do like this scene just to kind of check out what we're getting for performance when it comes to the different graphic settings. So let's switch over to medium here. Of course, lose a few FPS there, and image quality is still pretty good. We're going to switch over to high. We're going to drop down to about 40 FPS, and then we'll drop over to ultra, and we'll come down into the 30s. Now this isn't indicative of actual gameplay or running around the world, but this gives me an idea of what the performance is like. And I switch over to FSR quality here. We get a little bit of a bump, but of course you lose a lot of the effects and particle effects with that FSR. FSR on balanced gives us 39 FPS here on ultra. Again, you lose a lot of image quality when it comes to that in these types of scenes. And then FSR on performance. Now I wouldn't run the game at high or ultra when it comes to the Steam Deck here, but I just wanted to take a look. I think for the most part I'll be sticking with low here and probably no FSRs. I think I get the best image quality throughout the game, especially with how many particle effects are in the game, because you lose a lot of those with FSR through the software. Now if we jump forward a little bit farther into the game here, again, performance with the low settings, 60 FPS, will go anywhere between 40 and 60 depending on where we're at. And of course, if you get farther and farther into the game, you get into areas where you're really battling a lot more zombies and NPCs and that type of thing. Your system's going to take even more of a hit, especially since we're more CPU bound in this game than anything else. So I do expect a little bit lower performance the farther you get in with a lot more happening. But just kind of in the beginning parts of this game running around playing, this is the kind of performance and experience that I've been able to get here with Dead Island 2 on Steam Deck. And again, just the fact that it's running as well as it is, super happy to see. Now, if we switch over here and we take a look at some graphics again, we have our low on here and we'll switch over to medium. Over on medium, we lose about 8 or 9 FPS there, similar to the other scene that we had. We'll go over to high, we'll come down around 34 here. And then we'll go ahead and go over to ultra, which is going to bring us down into the 20s. And again, that's just sitting still here with no real NPCs or a lot going on. So again, high and ultra pretty much not something I'm going to mess with. I think medium, which is what we're in here, which is still going to get you some drops and a lot happening, especially when things really hit the CPU. But you could lock it to 30 and probably get yourself a pretty decent experience if you're wanting to kind of up the graphics a bit, or maybe a combination of low and medium. And if that's what you're going for and you want to boost that above low, then you could probably get away with that. I think if you're going to try to run medium though, with or without FSR, from what I've been seeing, 30 FPS cap is probably going to be your best bet. But at least the game is running this well when it comes to Dead Island. And now if we go ahead and stick with medium and turn FSR on balanced, we really don't get much of a boost here when it comes to the FPS. Again, we're pretty CPU bound in a lot of ways, especially if you're jumping up to medium or higher, and you'll see our GPU usage isn't going 99 most of the time. It's dipping down, meaning it's waiting for frames, so FSR is not necessarily helping us out a lot there when it comes to playing in medium. So again, I think 30 FPS cap if you're really wanting to jump up there and just kind of boost the graphics a little bit for yourself here on Dead Island. Now I want to go back over and switch to my low settings, which is pretty much how I'm going to stick with playing this game, whether I'm at 30, 40, or unlocked. I'm probably just going to stick with the low preset for the most part. But what you can see here is with low and quality on the FSR, it doesn't really help us out much. Actually, it can make things worse. So as we sit here, we're around 48 to 50 FPS. And when I switch this over here with FSR off, we actually gain 4 FPS, and that's because we're adding some more pressure to the GPU side of things, and it's not waiting for the CPU as much. So it really depends on the game and where you're at as to whether or not FSR really helps you. If you're CPU bound, then FSR can actually hurt you and reduce frames because you're taking more pressure off of the GPU, therefore it's waiting even longer for your frames and causing you more troubles. Now let's go ahead and jump over to 30 FPS here, and of course that's going to save you some battery life, use less power, leave you some overhead with your resources, and pretty much if you're running low or medium with or without FSR, you're probably not really going to dip. Maybe later in the game when you have a lot of NPCs, a lot more action, particle effects, and all that happening, in medium you might dip, but I don't believe so in low. And for the most part, though, this just didn't feel very good or near as responsive to me, and I just really didn't enjoy running around playing the game at 30 FPS. But switching over to 40 FPS, which is of course something we do love here on the Steam Deck, it's a nice in-between ground, and I think I could get away with playing this at the 40. It's definitely a little bit more responsive than the 30. It's not as harsh on the eyes when I'm panning around and looking. It's a little bit smoother, and while I do still prefer getting to that 45 to 60 area when it comes to playing, and I can most of the time on low, 40 FPS is doable, and of course does help increase the battery life, not near as much as 30, but it does help you out. So 30 or 40 FPS still working great there. But switching back over to low and unlocked here, I think for a lot of the time this is probably how I'll run around and play the game, see how it performs later on as I keep putting more and more time in. But I think ultimately I was just really happy to see that the game was launching and running well, not having frame time issues, not giving me issues with Epic or anything like that. I was really able to just install the game and play and not have any problems, no crashing, no major performance issues, and that just was a nice thing here with Dead Island 2 on the Steam Deck. So anyways, guys, thanks a lot for coming and checking out the video as always. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.